What's up, guys? Welcome back to Sensibly Loud Radio, Simpsons edition. It's your main man, J-Mac, here on this gorgeous Tuesday evening here at Sensibly Loud HQ, Dallas, Texas. I'm joined by Mountain Karl and B-Eazy. Brandon, what's going on, boys?
Hey, how's it going? How's it going, Carl?
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Dr. Karl. I love that Karl has a built-in character named after him on The Simpsons already.
For that. Yeah, I'm one half of the Lenny Carl construct.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. Well, we're going to be talking Simpsons today. This is a show that's one of my favorite shows in the whole world. We've been talking about doing this really since we started the show. And I feel like, especially now that we have three of us, it's a good time to really sit down and start diving into what we love about this show, some of the brilliance of this show. And we're going to do our top 10 characters of all time on The Simpsons, which I can't tell you how many times this list's changed for me. I don't know about you guys.
Oh, yeah. No, it's changed quite a bit. And point of order, J-Mac, this is top 10 ancillary characters that are not the family members. So we're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive here. It's gonna be fun. It's
outside the family. It's no core family members. So, I mean, if you want to have like Patty and Selma in yours, you're welcome to. I would probably disagree with you, but regardless, we're going to basically work outside those family constructs and confines there. So
taking last minute notes over here. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. And like, I suppose like grandpa would be fine kind of thing, but I mean, he's still a core family member to me, right? I mean, where do you guys weigh in there?
Correct.
Yeah. Abe would definitely be part of the core family.
I do love Abe. So let's talk about that first, I guess, before we get into the ancillary characters. So give me your ranking of just family members in general.
If I had to pick, it would definitely be Bart and Homer at the top.
Okay.
And Marge has got her moments.
Yeah.
She's got her episodes that are pretty fun. But for the most part, she's kind of, the straight man. And then
she's the stick in the mud. She's
a stick in the mud, but Lisa is the antagonist of the show. And I will stand by that 100%.
Yeah, no, I don't think any other than the hockey episode. I don't think there's a great Lisa episode, and maybe even the one whenever she becomes a vegetarian. That one's a pretty good one, but that's more great because of like the stuff that happens around her.
Right.
So, I would agree with that for the most part. I definitely think Marge has her moments for sure, but I think Homer's number one for me because Homer is the perfect All-American. I mean, what do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like everything that Homer goes through, the job that he has, everything when it comes to work, family, stuff that stresses him out, stuff that gets him excited. I think it definitely relates to the All-American everyman for sure.
And really and truly, he's an absolute bozo. So it's really kind of spot on. Like, we're all a bunch of morons just in general, right? I mean, we all have
definitely my base setting. So
yeah, I've always loved, like, there are very certain things that I've loved about this show. And like, when I think about this show, I go like seasons, like the first couple are always really weird in any show because you're really trying to get like the base of what's happening. You haven't really figured it out yet, right? I mean, is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And the animation actually in the first one or two seasons is actually kind of spotty here and there. Like it doesn't even look like the same show. I mean, between then and now. So
well, I mean, it was 1991. I mean, it just the technology changes there too. But I just I've always loved though that they've stayed true to that like overall look, no matter how old this show has gotten. So like, I look at like, I've never really seen, I'd say past season 15, I haven't seen any of them. And like, it's very spotty from like 11 to like 14 or so. It's very spotty of what I've seen. So
is that writer's strike territory? What is going on there? I mean, because I know that there are definitely some real misses as far as seasons go right there in the middle, and it kind of changes dynamic moving forward. So, I mean,
it does. I think you had a lot of things change at that point in time though, because you had Family Guy come along And you kind of still had to compete with that. That was the thing that made The Simpsons so great, was that it stood on its own always. And it didn't really, it's funny and it's stupid funny because of, it's a very specific type of humor. I mean, like Conan O'Brien was a main writer for the first like 6 seasons of that show. And it shows like that. So much of that is just weird, off the wall, deep references. I mean, I would say 90% of world events I learned about growing up watching The Simpsons first, and then like saw like, Casablanca or whatever, and be like, oh, that was on The Simpsons. And they did that in like 22 minutes. Amazing. Like I run into those things still all the time of just worldly references. It's a brilliantly written show.
Yeah, they did a lot of the bits and everything where they actually see they were all creative, and they were fun enough without being jarring when it comes to, well, it wasn't like ADHD bits, kind of like the Family Guy, chicken fights and stuff like that. It's
There's nothing wrong with that.
no, there's a time and place for that, right? I mean, it's just The Simpsons had their own formula, and it worked. And it's been on how many seasons now? What, 20 something?
I think they just passed 25.
My Lord.
Yeah. And I mean, it's still going strong. I think you mentioned the writer's strike and everything. There was the point in time where they took the main writers off The Simpsons to write the Simpsons movie.
Okay.
And you didn't have that generation of people that were protective of The Simpsons.
Gotcha.
and the world that they construct. So like, I always thought it was like a really important dynamic that you never really had like Homer cheat on Marge. Ultimately, he got close a couple of times, but he ultimately prevailed as the ultimate lovable family guy, and before Family Guy was a thing, but like, the family man kind of thing. And like, I always love that about it.
He has that dopey charm that everyone loves. Some people even envy.
Dude, I mean, if you could just walk around like Homer Simpson for like a day, I mean, you couldn't complain with that.
No, the blissful ignorance is exactly a benchmark for a lot of people on this earth. So let's go for it.
Brandon, where does Bart fall for you?
Well, before I give you my thoughts, I just wanted to share this. So I looked it up. The first episode date was December 17th, 1989. That's how old this show is.
That's crazy. Wow. And it was on the Tracy Ullman show before that.
Yeah. So that's right. It's now it's at 30 seasons.
30 seasons. That's right. I knew that just passed a big mile marker or landmark.
Yeah.
Huge
crazy
benchmark.
For a show to be on that long. But yeah, to me, Bart was always he's always the quintessential terrorist of the show. He was always instigating stuff. And I think he's a big reason as to why when I was really, really young, I was, prohibited from watching The Simpsons.
Watching The Simpsons
until I got older because they didn't want me to become an asshole, right? So, but as far as my thoughts on The Simpsons goes, as far as TV show, the thing that I really respect about it, and they covered this on like CNN had that the 1990s and stuff. It was really the first show to come out that kind of mirrored what American society is about in pop culture, and how things are covered and how ridiculous over the top a lot of things are. So how they were able to humorize that and kind of inform people like, hey, this is how ridiculous things are. Before South Park came along, before all these other shows came along, that's what I really respect about it, is that they were the first ones to really do that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say they let us laugh at ourselves.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
And very, very critical stuff that, at the time, I mean, very heady stuff too. I mean, they really distilled it and they made it fun. So good on them.
Exactly. And it didn't have it wasn't necessarily all about the shock factor, but it was definitely shocking in a lot of ways. And like, even down to like the way they always marketed that show, like I always think of Bart in the Butterfinger ads, which were brilliant.
Yep.
And The Simpsons was in its heyday at that point. Like it was cooking. And that was the perfect time for that ad, but they didn't overdo it with that kind of stuff either.
No, good placement. I mean, it was pretty edgy for back in the day. I mean, I could put this up against other Fox lineup stuff like what Married with Children and stuff like that, where definitely had your more racy humor going on. So
for sure,
that's good. That's good.
I was thinking about Married with Children the other day. The fact that they had that club called the No Ma'ams Club.
No Ma'ams. That's right.
So terrible.
Oh no! Again, top things that you could not get rid of or away with today.
Correct.
Yeah.
My grandmother had that same couch that they had in their living room. Like it was the exact same. Like that was just a really popular couch. And all I could ever think about is Al Bundy sitting there with his hand in his pants. Like, so uncomfortable. So weird. Anyway, but yeah, no, I agree with that. Like it definitely was edgy at that time. And it continued to be that way until like Family Guy came along. I just always think back to like South Park and Family Guy both. And like South Park was always different enough to where it wasn't exactly on the same plane as like a cartoon as much as it was just like a animation ridiculousness. Like Robot Chicken's a great example of that. Sure. Hilarious, but just a weird ass kind of thing, right?
Its own thing.
Yeah, and that's always kind of how I looked at those. But then Family Guy kind of bridged that gap for me, and that's how I've always looked at this. And so they're all great in their own right. I just think The Simpsons felt like they had to get more edgy, and that's where they kind of lost me. And I grew up too. Like I grew up on most of these episodes, and I mean, I'm sure like you guys, you watched them at like 5:30 and 7 or something like that on the WB, and they were in syndication, and they were great to watch.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I got some seasons on DVD when that was still a thing. And yeah.
I have 11 seasons on DVD that I don't know what to do with.
I know what to do with them. Binge them in Colorado.
Absolutely. I mean, we could definitely do that. I have, but they're all streaming now everywhere. So I just stream it from FX now anyway. And so I have this giant CD binder full of the actual discs, and I tape the pamphlets in there too. Because I mean, that's artwork in and of itself. I mean, I miss album artwork. Don't you guys?
Yep. Yeah, I enjoyed that. I went when I showed up, and when we showed up to Colorado for the ski trip, and I had a small wallet of DVDs and Blu-rays and stuff like that. I brought it out to Sambino, and I said, "Hey man, is there anything in here you want to watch?" And he goes, "You still buy physical media?" And I never felt like such an old son of a bitch in my life. I was just like, what?
Heck, shame the shit out of you.
Yeah, I was just like, wow, okay, yeah. Never mind. What do you have on streaming, sir?
I'm gonna go take these DVDs and stick them right up my ass real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm gonna go play frisbee with these like AOL CDs. So
yeah. The 500 free hours.
Yep.
That would be like him to tech shame somebody like that. That's
he got me pretty good, no question.
But yeah, well, I think we'll have to dive into some of these because Jimmy Midtown's a big Simpsons guy too. So I think after we get done with the top 10, I think we're going to do some different like mini bonus episodes and stuff where we get some different people in the company's take, because Josh is a huge Simpsons guy. Caitlin's really into the Simpsons. Claire loves the Simpsons. Like we've got a lot of people here that love that kind of humor. I mean, Caitlin might be the closest to me as far as like knowledge of that show, of just how many sheer times we've seen those, because she still has the DVDs and she watches them every morning while she gets ready in the background.
Nice.
So
yeah, we don't have to stop here. We don't have to stop here. We can keep going.
Yeah. And like whenever we get to Halloween, I want to do our favorite Treehouse of Horrors. I think that'd be a lot of fun. We could do a big binge watch party of those.
Yes.
So
got some good ones on there.
Oh boy, brother. But yeah, so there's tons in this space to talk about. I know that like I'm probably the biggest Simpsons guy of all of us. And Brandon, you kind of said it yourself, and I think this falls into a lot of people, or people fall into this category of you didn't grow up watching it because your parents wouldn't let you because it wasn't a great influence. My mom didn't love it either. I'll tell you.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of that as well. And Brandon, you mentioned that your mother didn't want you to become an asshole. Well, I've got news to my mother. She failed.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I don't think it really made a difference. I always thought that it was a really great look at family life because I always knew it was a joke. Like I always knew that it's meant to be ridiculous. Like the fact that Homer works at a nuclear power plant with no college degree, no training, sleeps all day, has no qualms with just pouring a bucket of water over a console that's going off. I mean, just brilliant look at the fact that that's obviously not true. And I don't know how you could really take it that seriously, but I get where parents were coming from at the time.
Yeah, the dialing wand episode where he was fat enough to be in a moo and he was trying to operate a nuclear power plant from home remotely was probably the lowest point for any actual person watching that film, like watching that show, who actually works in a nuclear power plant.
Yeah.
But, Yeah, no, it's great. It's great.
I mean, the sheer premise of the fact that he could just hit buttons from a computer to check all of the stuff at the nuclear power plant from home because he's overweight is just, he's a nuclear safety inspector.
Yeah,
Like, how does that happen?
Vent nuclear gas. Don't mind if I do. Yeah.
Yeah, man, there are some great episodes. That man, every time I think of that episode, all I think about is whenever he goes to the movies and he's too big to fit in the seats, and so he offers to sit in the aisle, and the manager tries to bribe him with a garbage bag full of popcorn. It's like, that's just such a quintessential way they write that show because it's so backhanded.
Oh yeah, I love it.
There's so many Easter eggs like that. I love this show, so I'm definitely excited to talk top 10 with you guys. This is going to be great.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Well, so I guess we'll go 10-1, and the way we kind of set this up, and I'll give a little bit of criteria. We tried to look at, for the most part, characters that occur more than one time in the show. So, for instance, like we look at like Rodney Dangerfield's episode that he was in, where he was Larry Burns, Mr. Burns' son. A great episode, hilarious. He was the perfect actor to be a lazy ass, trophy salesman who sits by the side of the train track, and he was perfect in every way. But like, there was just enough of him. But I wouldn't say that's like enough to make him a favorite of all time for me. I don't know about you guys.
I've got some one hitters on mine, but they were the one I basically made the criteria off the people who made me laugh or think the most.
Okay.
Right. And so, yeah, I've got some single hitters on mine, and then some more regular people, I think, as we go towards the top. But yeah.
Oh, there are certain ones where they hit it out of the park so well that they didn't need a second go round.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
To start this, do we have any, like, just outside the top 10, like runner-ups?
Oh, my runner-up right now, I think, may tie with 10, but probably Duffman.
Duffman. Hell yeah, dude.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Talk about Duffman.
Duffman is this is like in the era right after like Spuds McKenzie and stuff like that, right? You've got like beer ads and everything that are trying to get like mascots like Mario or Sonic. So it's kind of outrageous, and everybody's kind of putting their hat in the ring. But when it comes to Simpsons' take on it, Duffman's pretty fantastic in that he is, like everybody else, ageless, dressed up in a Duff costume, and speaks with a ridiculous voice only until he talks to his agent.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it gets really like kind of just quiet almost.
Yeah. It's very reserved and kind of weaselly and whiny, and but no, I mean, it's one of those characters, when he shows up, you always get a chuckle out of him. So it's definitely one of those that is a recurring character that I threw an honorable mention. But no, I always enjoyed every single time he was on the video, or God, I would say on the video, on the TV.
Yeah.
Yep.
You won't get any complaints out of me about that. I all about Duffman. I think maybe Duffman's story wasn't told enough. They should have used a slow day to tell his story a little bit.
Yeah, flesh him out a little bit.
But at the same time, kind of to your point, he's in it just enough. Like, he just shows up to ramp up the energy and ramp up the party every time. Like, whenever they're having the St. Patty's Day parade, he's up there on the float just yelling and like off that beer gun. Like, just ridiculous, like really amping up the energy though.
Maybe he's got just enough presence so that someone has written pages upon pages of fan fiction. So
maybe. The most that we probably learned about him was whenever he showed up, whenever Barney stopped drinking. So this is actually the episode whenever Barney loses Homer's car in New York City and Homer has to go get it.
Yes.
And he loses it at the Twin Towers. So that's a tough look.
Yep.
That makes this episode a little hard to go back on.
Kind of dated.
A little bit. It doesn't age well, but it also kind of does because it's I don't know. It's kind of a good memory, kind of thing. And he just hates New York City so much. But he got there because Barney was the designated driver because they got in trouble for driving through the school baseball or field or something like that. And so they have to have a designated driver. Well, Barney drew the short straw to be the designated driver that night. Barney being the complete barfly who literally lives in the bathroom of the bar, is kind of what it seems.
Right in the back of Moe's, yeah.
Yeah, he comes out of the bathroom brushing his teeth in the morning in a robe, so that's upsetting. But he ends up winning this big like Duff thing where he had mailed in like 250 million coupons or whatever, and Duff Man came to throw a party, and he was the DD, and he just couldn't take it, and he got all freaked out and ran off with the car, and left it in New York. It just turned into a whole thing, and so Duff Man always shows up though at just the wrong time to amp up the energy like that, or just the right time. I don't know.
Right. Who would be your honorable mention?
Brandon, do you have any honorable mentions here first?
I actually would say Barney. I mean, he's one of those where he's like your down on your luck buffoon, always drunk at the bar. And yeah, he sometimes can be like a catalyst for moving the story into a different direction, kind of like you mentioned on that in one episode, but not enough to crack the top 10 for me.
I don't hate that either, because Barney is of different skills and stuff like that, right? Like he sings well. He was an astronaut at one point,
right?
Like
he was Plow King.
Of course he was the Plow King. That was a classic episode. It's Barney's got a lot of great attributes, but he's overall just a barfly. And I mean, there's the great episode where he made the video. It's the episode that Jay Sherman's in, where he made the video and Homer wanted to vote for the video of the guy getting hit, Hans Moleman getting hit in the balls with the football. And yes. It was some like video about Barney's life being really tragic and sad and sleeping in the gutter, and everybody was moved by that. And Homer wanted to vote for the most ridiculous one. So, Barney's a man of many talents. Like he comes up a lot. I don't hate that outside the top 10. I have two just outside the top 10. The first one is my favorite one hitter of all time. And like I said, I tried to make at least characters that had appeared more than once on mine throughout. So that's why the only reason I leave this character off the list, Hank Scorpio, is by far one of my favorite characters ever.
Great pick.
So Homer gets a job at another city simply because he's been at the plant the longest. A great reason to get promoted or to get a better job offer. And ends up going to work for this absolute supervillain. Is great at his job. He's a great motivator. And he doesn't realize that he's working for Hank Scorpio, who's basically Elon Musk, right?
He's a mix between like Elon Musk and Dr. No.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, and
yeah.
You have it like the play on James Bond, like Mr. Bont or whatever.
Yes.
So yeah, the whole thing is amazing. The fact that Hank Scorpio is as good of a boss as he is.
Yeah, he's great.
You only find out about this whole maniacal thing to take over like the West Coast or whatever at the very end. So yeah. They drop little hints here and there, but it's fun. I love, especially the very end of that, where he's given like Homer a motivational speech and then kind of throws him in like this underground train to get him out of there. It's awesome. I love everything about that. It's
like whenever Homer's walking out of that absolute battle scene and he's like kicks a grenade and it goes off, him and like doesn't have a clue what's going on. And like he comes up to Hank Scorpio at one point and is like, hey, is there any cream for my coffee or sugar for my coffee around here? And he just reaches into his pocket and pulls out a handful of sugar and gives it to him. And he's like, do you want any cream? And he's like, no. Yeah, there are just so many like things about him that is just amazing. He's a great dude, but he's also a maniacal genius. It must be what it's like to work for Elon Musk. That's all I can say. So he was probably out in the top 10, unfortunately, but I love Hank Scorpio.
Yeah.
Voiced by Albert Brooks, by the way.
Right. He does an amazing job.
Yes, it's perfect. It's just what it needs to be. And then the other one that was outside my top 10 was Frank Grimes. Frank Grimes is a one episode hitter, a good dude. He basically points out all the injustices that is Homer Simpson. So he works, he's like this orphan who works his way up, works really hard, busts his ass to put himself through law school. He lives under a bowling alley that's on top of another bowling alley. It's like he's got this hard life and just sees Homer, who does absolutely nothing. And they basically have the same job at the power plant, or Homer works right next to him. And he just can't stand how lazy Homer is and how he has, the wife and kids and the house and all this. And he has nothing to show for what all he's worked for. It's just He's an incredible character. He ends up dying in that episode because he just goes crazy and grabs a bunch of electrical wires, and because he just can't take the pressure. And so Frank Grimes, an amazing character outside the top 10 for me, though.
Right. Good
All
pick.
right. So let's start top 10. Brandon, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So my number 10 is Duff Man.
Oh, good pick.
Yep. So
obviously,
just his over the top energy. Anytime he comes into the episode, always made me laugh. And he was always sort of that quintessential, just kind of like that representative of the Simpsons. Anytime they did like the Quickie Mart convenience store, things like that, you always had the Duff beer. And anytime I saw that logo, I always thought of Duff Man. So yeah.
I love that. I think the gimmick of Duff was done the perfect way because it comes up a lot, but also not too much.
And it plays into a lot of the bits in the background and everything too. So you don't necessarily have to focus on like the wording and everything. They do a lot of the Naked Gun kind of slapstick humor in the background and like billboards and things like that. So it works really well.
We are fans of Leslie Nielsen on this show.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes. All right, Carl, number 10 for you.
All right. Oddball pick, but I'm sticking by it. Bumblebee Man.
Bumblebee Man. Fuck yeah.
Bumblebee Man on Canal Ocho. He is.
Yeah.
He definitely he only has something like 4 lines that he says the entire time. They're almost always in Spanish, and he has probably the least depth outside of Duffman, right? And but somehow with his lack of lines, maybe even just with his physical comedy, like them putting him in like telenovelas and everything, makes me laugh my ass off. Every single time he shows up, I don't know why, but he's got physical comedy aspect to stuff. It's always great. Huge fan of Bumblebee Man.
It's a little bit racist, just a little bit, but not too much.
Right.
AC, I should say.
Maybe they've got like legacy on the whole racism thing because it's been around for so long. They can keep like dabbling in it a little bit.
Got it. The most that you ever find out about his life is that there's an episode called 22 Short Stories about Springfield, and they just go through these little tiny episodettes of they're just random plot lines. Like what it's always felt like to me is that they just sewed together all the ones that they didn't really have a place for, and that's kind of how this came out. And every time I think about like all those together, I just kind of sew that fabric together, and I think I can't help but go back to this character specifically. So I love it.
Good.
All right. My number 10. I couldn't decide between these two, so I'm putting them together because they're a pair, really and truly.
Okay.
We're going to do Lenny and Carl here.
Yes.
You can't have Lenny without Carl. I mean,
I agree with that.
Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
And the disturbing thing is when I looked into this a little bit, and this is probably from the show going longer, but I never really realized they're like gay type relationship undertones of like how close they are and some of the weird lines they say to each other and things like that of just like, see, this is why people think we're gay and stuff like that, just like really random things. And like, not that it matters, but it's just, that's always been like a really weird undertone of that show that I've never really thought much about until recently.
Yeah, somebody could probably write a thesis on like the study of subtext between Lenny and Carl, which is fine because that's about right. I mean, they've got a lot to work with. They show up in a lot of episodes, and they don't share a whole lot of lines, but their friendship and or relationship is never really questioned. So it's always an added value thing for sure.
Yeah, for sure. All right, number 9, Brandon.
Number 9, I have Chief Wiggum.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
so he just he's always been one of the funnier characters in my opinion. Of course him and his son, just the shit that they say, but yeah, he's as far as from a legacy standpoint, he's just one that I couldn't have he had to make the top 10 list for me.
I love that. I have him much higher, but we'll talk about that when we get there and why.
Right. And I omit him, but not because I don't love him. I mean, like I said, I kind of went off the reservation on my picks, but the But the whole thing with Chief Wiggum I love is that no matter how idiotic he is or his son is, you can't help but love him.
Yep.
And their their entire demeanor is not unlike Homer, and that is it is lovable idiocy, and it's definitely kind of sprinkled in here and there. But I it's always enjoyable.
Chief Wiggum is the perfect person to be a cop because he's a lazy moron, and it just paints the right slapstick on it, you know, and that's kind of what this show was always about, was just kind of the lighter side of it. Because I mean, come on, like cops aren't really like that, but they kind of are. Like I just always think about that episode where Wiggum, like they get there for the field trip and Wiggum like parks his police cruiser up on the curb and is like walking in with a towel around his neck, shaving with an electric razor, and is like, it's getting harder and harder to get here by 10, you know, and it's like, that's not, obviously a police officer isn't really like that, like in real life. Like it can't really work like that, or I hope not anyway.
Yeah, right.
It was the perfect representation for that.
No, the stuff I love about The Simpsons in general is that it kind of distills stuff down to its lowest common denominator a lot of times, but has fun doing it. And and so they don't pull back any of their punches, obviously, like throwing first responders and stuff like that, and politicians and everybody involved. It's an equal opportunity offender, which is why I love shows like that. But yeah, I mean, it's gonna rag on every denomination and every ethnicity and everyone, and I do enjoy that fact. So yeah, I don't necessarily believe that first responders are Chief Wiggum, but I do enjoy the fact that that he is like some kind of caricature, and I love it. I mean, he's the absolute comedy gold.
The suspect is under the sun now. The suspect is hatless. I repeat, hatless.
He's like staring into the barrel of his revolver, like, yeah, why isn't this working, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I love it.
When it's one of my favorite like Wiggum tangential episodes is whenever they enforce the 18th Amendment in Springfield and they ban alcohol.
Right.
He gets fired and he has to sell the trigger and most of the parts of his gun to feed his family. And it's just like he's like, that gun doesn't have a trigger. He's like, yeah, I had to sell it. You know, like why do you have it? You know, just so stupid. But yeah, Wiggum was always great that way, man. I have him much higher. We may touch a few things on more when we get there, but
For sure.
Next for you, Carl.
Next for me, number 9 is Rainer Luftwaffe Wolfcastle.
Oh, Rainier Wolfcastle. Love that.
Yeah, my McBain love. Every single time you get to poke fun at the Governator, I'll take it. And of course, he has one of my favorite lines of all time in Simpsons, and when he's playing Radioactive Man, when he says, "My eyes, the goggles, they do nothing."
He just puts the goggles on as the acid's coming at him.
Yep. I can't help but love that guy. And obviously he gets played into some larger bits when we talk about, Bart and like dating his daughter and things like that later on. I don't know. It's just all awesome that he's driving the Canyonero.
Yeah.
later on. It's just awesome. I love everything about that character, even though he shows up very little. And
no, he shows up the perfect amount, I think.
He's a one-note guy, but it's enjoyable every single time he's on there.
Upon further inspection, I'm wearing loafers. He thought that they told him his shoes were untied. He stared at them for like 2 hours. The sun went down. Upon further inspection, I'm wearing loafers. I love that. Oh, yeah. No, he definitely has his moments for sure. And again, all I can ever picture is him putting those goggles on right before the acid hits because he's tied up to it.
Yeah, so that's probably one of my favorite moments in all of Simpsons. So I had to throw that in there.
That is one of the best tie-ins we've ever come up with on this show because number 9 for me is Milhouse Van Houten.
Nice.
Perfect.
Who played Fall Out Boy.
That's right.
The band is named after, if you didn't know that.
I assume that was the case.
Yeah. And they had a lot of Simpsons themed stuff like early on in their music and stuff that was actually pretty cool. But I love Milhouse, man. Like Milhouse he gets the shit beaten out of him all the time. All the time. And one of my favorite Millhouse moment ever is whenever he's always in love with Lisa, right?
Mhm.
Right.
For whatever reason. And he is trying to pass a note to Lisa saying, guess who likes you? And somehow it gets to Nelson. And Nelson, and he opens up the note and Nelson turns and looks at him and Millhouse is like doing his, so Lisa likes Nelson. That's what it is. And he has to give the note to her and she gives it to Millhouse to give to Nelson. And so it says, guess who likes you? And he turns around and looks at Millhouse and he's like doing his fingers and like, and his eyebrows go up or whatever. And then the next scene is him just getting hauled out in a stretcher.
Yep.
Just gets his absolute ass kicked. And that happens to him all the time. Or there's the weird episode, the hockey episode, which we talked about earlier, when Marge keeps his teeth. She won't give his teeth back.
Yeah, he's absolute putty. He gets his ass kicked all the time. His dad apparently very cool at the Cracker Factory. I will throw that out there.
Yeah.
I love that episode where they're just like, you can't imagine that they're actually having fun at the Cracker Factory, and it's just like amazing theme park level shit happening at a Cracker Factory. So no, I love that, and I obviously enjoy his dynamic with pretty much all the cast.
And he's just such a little wiener too,
Oh yeah, top notch wiener.
And like, in fact, Homer calls him wiener. Like, there's an episode where he's like talking to Mr. Burns. It's the one we were talking about with Larry Burns earlier. Whenever Rodney Dangerfield's on it, and he's like, Mr. Burns asks Homer if his son ever brings friends home and forces him to talk to him. And he's like, oh yeah, this wiener kid named Millhouse. He just brings it up immediately, like he knows who he is. Millhouse just always randomly gets shit on, and it makes me laugh every single time.
I will say that Millhouse without glasses might be one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen.
So blind.
His eyes are just like dots
Yeah.
drawn on his like giant yellow face, and it is scary as hell. That's like predator level to me. But
agreed. Okay,
Yeah.
So that's my number 9. Brandon?
Number 8 is Principal Seymour Skinner.
Hell yes.
Good
Okay.
move.
So yeah, Skinner to me was always really funny, especially with the sort of the weird relationship he has with his mother, and I want to say, wasn't he also involved with like someone else, like the superintendent, or what was her name?
Well, so he's always being ruled by his
Right.
mother, and then his boss is the superintendent, who I found out. So Superintendent Chalmers is his boss. We've all talked about the steam ham thing to death, right? Like that's a classic. But
Super Nintendo Chalmers.
yeah, Super Nintendo Chalmers. And I only today found out that his first name is actually Gary. I have no idea.
Count me in on that one, not knowing his first name was Gary.
They've just always called him Superintendent Chalmers. So
Yep.
always bossed around by him. And then he dated Edna Krabappel, the
That's
school
right,
teacher.
The school teacher, yeah.
Which is a great episode. That thing is unreal. We won't go into the details of that one, but it's a great one.
Yep.
That leads into my next one, but I don't want to jump in line here. So I love that pick though. I think Seymour was amazing. His real name is Armin Tanzarian. He's not even really Seymour Skinner. He assumed that identity Don Draper
That's
style.
right, yeah.
Yeah, and
Forgot
so
about that.
yeah, and so he just kind of wormed his way in as the principal and everything, and he's the ultimate dope. But there's always great, like he's just a complex human being, and there's like times where there's an episode when Bart breaks his leg and he gets a telescope and he's looking at things around town at night, and Seymour is at the school just sharpening a stack of pencils.
Oh yeah, what is that like?
Pencil sharpener.
The take on like Rear Window or whatever that was.
Yeah, just
and then
so weird.
yeah, and then there's another one where it's like Bart being Dennis the Menace to Principal Skinner, which is a pretty classic episode.
Yep.
So
You can read my thoughts. I think things I would never say. Yeah, I love Skinner, man. He's great. It's not a bad pick. He didn't make my top 10, but I don't hate where you're at. All right, Carl.
All right, I've got a pretty esoteric one, but my choice is LT Smash, or Lieutenant Smash, the surreptitious serviceman from one of the Super Bowl episodes, I believe.
Hell
yeah. He was a music producer that chose to get Bart and the boys together so they would create the Party Posse.
Mm-hmm.
they came out with that massive hit song that had the chorus like Eva Net Niash. It was and like Lisa came up with it, and they're like, or found out that it was join the Navy backwards, and so when like the lid was about to be blown off of it, and Mad Magazine was about to do a big reveal or parody, I guess, of the Party Posse. What they found out, like Lisa removes like the period from LT and it's Lieutenant Smash, right?
Yeah, of
And
course.
so,
Yeah.
like the big reveal, and they're on an aircraft carrier doing this thing like for the
Of course
troops.
they are. Yeah.
And he like takes over the like LT Smash takes over the aircraft carrier and rams it into Mad Magazine's headquarters. And I'm like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Everything about that episode is one of my favorite episodes. But the like the sabotage where they've got like the NASA machine that's supposed to make them sound like the Backstreet Boys or whatever, and then they flip it off in the middle of it and they sound awful. Yeah, no, it's they're all a bunch of tone deaf morons, and everything about that's awesome. But LT Smash is probably one of my favorite single hitter kind of characters, and love him to death, especially the fact that the man hijacked an aircraft carrier.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
So remind me, who was in the Party Posse? It was Bart, Milhouse,
Nelson.
Ralph, and Nelson?
I think that's right.
Yeah. Why was Ralph in there? Ralph's an idiot. All right.
Because you have to have Ralph in there.
Yeah.
Again, like there's got to be the stupid one.
I mean, Keith Wiggum was in the B Sharp, so I mean, I guess that he has singing in his blood, so that makes sense.
Oh, well, relatively speaking, of course, with NASA's help. But yes, I'm with you 100%.
That is quite the obscure pick. I like it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry.
Okay. I don't think you should be sorry, though. I think that's obscure enough to, I mean, that's a dinger of an episode.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites for sure.
Okay.
What about you, man?
Next for me?
Yep.
Number 8 is Gil Gunderson.
Oh, Gil.
So Gil Gunderson, for those that may not be as familiar, Gil Gunderson is always the struggling sales guy.
That's right.
He's always so close to making a sale, but just really is bad at sales.
He can't do it.
No, he can't do it. And, he's got the wife that cucks him all the time. He lives in a hot air balloon at one point. I mean, he's always selling something. It's always, oh man, I was so close. He's brilliant with it. He
refers to himself in the third person occasionally.
He's talking himself up just like anybody would in sales. He's the perfect failed salesman. I couldn't do without a little bit of Gil on this list. I feel good about the pick at number 8.
Good pick.
All right, next, Brandon.
Number 7 is the comic book guy.
Ooh,
Yeah,
good move.
So, a lot of the episodes that have stuck with me are, the episodes where I want to say is either Bart or Lisa, maybe both of them end up in the comic book shop at some point. But I remember one episode where he's behind the counter and he's talking about, issue number blah, blah, blah. And then he starts talking about like, oh, well, that could be in the Spy series by Robert Ludlum. And I laughed because I knew, I knew who Robert Ludlum was before, like the guy who wrote the Born Identity series and all that. So,
right.
But
yeah, of course.
His I don't know. It's just he's always had these really funny moments that have kind of stuck with me with the show.
I love that pick. Yeah, he hits on all cylinders every single time.
Yeah, and the comic book guy is not like the people who will pick apart this entire episode after it's released.
Probably so. Yeah, on the internet, he'll register his complaints around the world in minutes.
Yes, with the joy of internet anonymity.
It's like whenever the girl told him that she would date him as long as he promised to comb the sweet tarts out of his beard, and he told her to don't change. Said, "Don't change me, baby."
Yep, that's right.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I love the comic book guy. He always plays that like I don't really give a shit store owner role really well too.
Oh yeah.
Which is also a good part of his character.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Very uninvolved, more concerned about chat rooms and internet hearsay than anything that's happening underneath his nose.
Love it. Karl, what's next?
Oh boy. My next pick is Lyle Lanley, the monorail salesman.
Hell yes.
He's an absolute sociopath.
Yep.
He is a great singer, though. He's got everybody on board.
Great
But,
salesman.
yeah, great salesman. He has left a complete trail of ruin behind him with other monorail projects that have failed, and he's gonna give his best shot here in Springfield. And I love every moment of that episode. Definitely written by Conan O'Brien, and it's just everything about that, from the chant monorail, to just his what was it? No, it wasn't North Haven Brook, because that
No,
was from.
that was right.
Was that right? Okay.
Ogdenville was one of them.
Ogdenville, yeah, and then Marge goes and investigates these places, and they were just like
Ruins because of the monorail.
complete destruction, like Mad Max style. Yeah, no, it's awesome.
The thing I love about, and this episode is a great example of this. The thing I love about this show is anytime you get the townspeople together, the townspeople act every bit like just a random crowd of people probably would, and they all just draw off of each other. They're so easily swayed by people like Lyle Landley, who can come in and sing a song and put on a good presentation. And these guys just blindly vote for everything. Like, it's such a dysfunctional city in general. And it's a perfect commentary on just a general crowd.
No, the Simpsons was great about pillorying the mobocracy before it was even a word.
Yeah.
And they absolutely lit fire to that entire idea. And they do it all the time. Like you said, every single time the townspeople get together, they make horrible decisions, and they're absolutely easily swayed.
And they're so emotional about it all too.
No, they are. And it's a perfect analogy to, the kind of crap that we deal with even today. So I love it.
Just how fast the crowd will turn on people too. That's always a really good part of that as well.
Oh yeah, on a dime. Whoever makes that like near cogent thought, just like, that's it.
Whoever
It's
raises
that
the
guy.
first hand and says that's fucked up. That's it.
Yeah,
that's gone.
Can't happen.
Yeah. No. And so I think that's what's funny about Lyle Landley, though, is that he's able to talk them into this so easily. And of course, he's like laying on a beach with a briefcase full of money. And it's fantastic in all ways. So I love that pick.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, number 7 for me.
Yep.
I made it an audible, and I've already talked about this, so we don't have to talk about it again. In that you put some obscure ones in there, I had to do some moving around, which I've done a lot of in the last couple of days. I'm sticking Hank Scorpio in there at number 7 because I have to. I can't have him outside the top 10. That's not fair.
Okay. All right. So honorable mention. We got number 7. I'll let keep it going.
Yep. All right, Brandon. 6 for you.
Nelson Muntz.
Yep, Nelson.
So, Nelson's that atypical school bully. I think I know I had one when I was a kid, and but he's also kind of Bart and Milhouse's antagonist for sure. Definitely a catalyst for a lot of episodes, especially with Bart. But yeah, he's always provided that observational humor when it's really needed, especially in the school, or even when it's not even at school, and he just shows up and randomly laughs at whoever just got like totally, shitted on.
Oh yeah.
Usually by him or his friends.
Even in the distance, when he has no part in an episode, he will absolutely like make the trademark laugh, and everybody will know exactly what's happening.
Absolutely. They play it at Mavericks games whenever a team makes a bad pass out of bounds or something like that. Like it comes up.
Yep.
I do love the episode whenever Lisa dates him, and not even just because of the reason we talked about a little bit ago when Nelson just ground pounds Milhouse, but just because you get a little bit of look into Nelson's story and it's every bit as dysfunctional as you kind of think it would be.
Yep.
The fact that his dad has a shooting car and he only has like 12 payments till it's paid off, and it's just a car that they shoot at in the backyard.
He drags all of the Simpsons into some weird shit. Especially was it Nelson with the one that was shooting like birds with a BB gun? Yeah, and then like Bart, felt peer pressure and everything.
Killed the bird's mother.
Killed the bird. Yeah, it just Damn. I mean, Simpsons touch on everything. I mean, from trying
Nelson,
to fix a man to killing innocent animals. I mean, it's all there.
and of course, Nelson just treated as like, that sucks.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go take a nap.
Bummer. Yep.
Yeah,
Target practice.
and of course, like Lisa corrals him and turns him into this really nice guy, and ends up being found out that he's throwing a bunch of old egg salad at Skinner's house in the middle of the night, and tries to hide it at Bart and Lisa's house, which is a great like commentary too. Like there's a scene there wherever he's like running from the cops, and he throws his shoe up at like the window to get Lisa's attention, and Homer opens up the window and he's like, Lisa's room is over there. And just not even worried about the boy that's throwing a shoe at your daughter's window at 2:00 in the morning while the cops,
Right.
just closes the window and goes back to bed, just not even thinking about it. Homer's always good to play the negligent father at the right time.
Perfect.
So you got a great look into what Nelson's like. So I love that pick. Carl?
My pick, it's number 6, Hank Scorpio.
Love it.
Yep.
Talked that one to death already.
Made the cut.
Yep. Anything that stuck out to you about him that we didn't cover?
I think we got it all. They definitely work a lot of Bond villain in, and I enjoyed that thoroughly. And trying to juxtapose that with being the best boss ever is definitely. I mean, the fact that he's a better boss than Mr. Burns,
right?
And yet he's also a failed megalomaniac. So, yeah.
I don't know if he's failed though or not. Like the scene, I was thinking about this right after we got done talking about it. Whenever he asked Homer, which country do you like least, Italy or France? Nobody ever says France.
Right. Or the fact that he bought Homer the
Broncos,
Denver Broncos at the end, is that after he had been bragging about wanting to own the Cowboys the whole time. Yeah. Oh, the Denver Broncos. And then like Elway throws a pass and it hits some dude in the back of the head. That was like the best way to end that episode ever.
Sure was. It was all out of nowhere. Yeah, no, great pick there. Love that. Okay. So number 6 for me is Mo.
Good pick.
Mo's an incredible bartender, a terrible friend. He hits on Marge constantly, calling her Midge, which gets me every single time.
Yeah.
And, like he's just overall pretty sleazy. He's not a great friend, but he's also kind of keeps Homer drunk and on his toes at the same time. He has really weird scenes where like he's keeping Shamu in his back room and back to SeaWorld. There's just like really weird Mo scenes that pop up from time to time. And
Flaming Mo
when he rips off Homer, whenever Homer becomes a boxer and he's going to fight Dredrick Tatum, who's an incredible character, by the way.
Right.
I mean, the best take on Mike Tyson you can have. I mean, that scene whenever he's like being interviewed, he's like, if I could go back on my mother's stair pushing, I would certainly reconsider it.
Yep.
But classic, someone that would be involved with Mo. He's a great character overall, but just an asshole. But I love Mo nonetheless. Every episode with Mo, you can't go wrong really for the most part.
Yeah, good recurring character. Like him, definitely not a moral paragon by any stake, but a lot of fun to watch.
For sure. All right, Brandon.
Number 5 is Milhouse.
Hell yes.
So just pretty much everything you've already covered. I mean, he was always that kid that got picked on. Just the hilariousness that ensued with him trying to get Lisa's attention, getting beat up, anything to do with hanging out with Bart in the treehouse, and not to mention the Treehouse of Horrors episodes. Yeah.
Always great.
Yeah, just one of those classic characters that, yeah, he's great.
Great pick. It's a great pick.
Good pick. Let's see. Number 5 for me was Hi Everybody, Dr. Nick.
Dr. Nick. Hell yes.
Yeah, Dr. Nick is not someone who has a medical license.
No.
And
no, he went to Hollywood Upstairs Medical College.
That's right. And he somehow has got everyone around his finger as far as medical knowledge is concerned. So the fact that he's gaslighting an entire town, if not an entire state, is another great reason to love this guy.
But also, we already talked about it a little bit. Like the townspeople are just a bunch of sheep, so they don't really care. And he's always doing like, gunshot wounds and stuff like that. His waiting room is full of a lot of weird things happening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But he is the affable non-doctor that everybody loves, and everybody knows his calling card. So what they got them asking him medical information on the news, and he gives all bullshit answers all the time. No, I love him. He's great.
Whenever he diagnosed grandpa with congestive skin failure, and he has him he has his nurses shock him with a golf cart motor every 10 seconds.
Hell yes.
So ridiculous.
Awesome.
You can't even shock somebody with a golf cart motor specifically. So I
Nope.
love that pick. All right. Number 5 for me is Lionel Hutz,
Good move.
also known as Miguel Sanchez. He is an incredible lawyer, but he's the worst lawyer in the world. And he always acts with the utmost confidence, though. I mean, I always think back to the episode whenever he's like, well, Mrs. Simpson, don't worry. I caught an episode of Matlock at the bar last night. The sound wasn't on, but I think I got the gist of it.
Yep. One of the best lines in all of Simpsons. Oh, Lionel Hutz is a good pick.
And like whenever he gives out his business card and it says like, no fee up front or whatever. And he's like, no. Oh, they've got all this screwed up. And he like puts a comma next to the no. And it's like, no, fee up front. But he's always like, a shisty lawyer. He's always like rummaging through the trash. There's that episode whenever they find him rummaging through their trash and they negotiate him to be their babysitter if he can keep the bird cage he found. Just ridiculous stuff. And, still got it. He's just so proud of himself. Ultimate skeezy lawyer. Couldn't leave him off the list. Lionel Hutz is great.
Oh, yes.
Nice.
All right, Brandon.
Number 4, I have Ned Flanders.
Hell yeah.
So, Flanders, I think the first episode I ever saw of The Simpsons had Flanders in it. And, he's the neighbor to The Simpsons. Your holier than thou type of neighbor that, religiously follows the Bible to a T. And, of course, Homer is the, lazy, drunk American that tests him. And that's what I like, their sort of dynamic where he's always testing him. And he just can't believe that Homer gets away with all the shit that he gets away with, and continues to live the life that he has. But the one episode I remember is, I want to say it was Bart that went and stayed with them for a little while.
Oh yeah, they got the kids taken away and they went to live at the Flanderses.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah, you get a real good look of what it's like to live inside the Flanders house, like with all the every channel on cable was blocked.
Yep. All the video games were like Bible based or whatever that was.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they had nachos Flanders styles, which were like cucumbers with cottage cheese on top of them, like so bland. And they like ice milk and just a real bland guy, but he's very nice. He's the perfect neighbor to Homer. Homer tells him to fuck off. He just oakley dokley and he's gone, and he doesn't really care. And then there's always the episodes where he tries to break out and be more like Homer, like when they go to Vegas together. That's a ridiculous episode.
Yep.
He's trying to approach Homer to figure out how to live life a little bit more on edge. And Homer's up on the roof while Bart is throwing tires into the fireplace and burning them. And Homer's cooking chicken with the smoke on top of the chimney. Just in like a chef hat with a beer, just ridiculous.
I mean, also, not to mention that Flanders has got gains for days because he is more jacked than anyone in the entire show.
Yeah, because he doesn't believe in eating carbs and all kinds of crap. Yeah. I love Flanders, dude. That's a great pick. Good work. All right, Carl, what's next?
My number 4 is Mayor Quimby.
Oh.
Mayor Quimby is the true protagonist of The Simpsons and the Eternal Mayor of Springfield. He is basically the one-to-one comparison to every politician, like lowest common denominator that you can find. He's got that thick accent a la JFK.
Yep.
And
modeled after Kennedy.
Yep. But there's not one thing he does that doesn't make me laugh my ass off.
The perfect amount once again.
Yeah. He's in there exactly the right amount. And yes, the quintessential politician, Mayor Quimby is my pick.
I like that. All right. Number 4 for me is Krusty the Clown.
I
We
like it.
Krusty is the ultimate sleazeball. He's arguably the funniest guy in town, but not funny all at the same time. He has all kinds of weird ups and downs in his life. And the story is told inside and out on him many, many times. So it's always very interesting. His show is just bonkers. He's got Sideshow Mel and Sideshow Bob at different times, which is great. And overall, like, I love the fact that he gambled his life savings against the Harlem Globetrotters. And because he felt like the New Jersey Nets were due, just like unbelievable. And he's watching on TV and he's like, dribble the ball. Come on. Just unreal, man. Like, of course, you come to find out that his life savings was like $14. Just for a celebrity, it all kind of adds up. He's the perfect shit show. He thinks that, whenever they spell out sex and children, they're talking about sex in front of children or whatever, and they're trying to spell it out so they don't know what they're talking about. He blurts out the sex cauldron. I thought they shut that place down. All things like that just speak to Krusty sleaziness, and I love it. I love it. Oh man, so that's my number 4.
That's a good pick. That is my number 3, Krusty. Which
okay,
nice.
Yeah, he's always down on his luck. I remember there was one episode where Sideshow Bob framed him for theft or murder? Yeah.
For murder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's just everything that could go wrong always does for Krusty. So it's one of those where it always makes me laugh.
Yeah, he's an absolute cluster, and I love him.
All right. Karl?
Number 3. My pick is Troy McClure.
Oh.
The late Phil Hartman. And there's not one moment where he says, you may remember me from certain things such as, and then he fills in complete bullshit, and I laugh every time.
Film.
Yep. Every time it's like self-help or like infomercials or just anything just tragically shitty, and I love it. Yep.
Meat Council. Yeah. He's a great character. He's in a lot of just random things, but he's always the infomercial guy. Phil Hartman was incredible in this show and all the voices they did because they were always about the same, but they were great whenever they came up. And
yeah, it always worked. He played to type, and I always made me laugh. So, but Troy McClure was quintessential Phil Hartman for me on that show, and that's what made me probably laugh the most as far as his characters go. And he finds his way into everything. Well, at least while he was around. So,
and even after that, they got the voice pretty close, but it was never exactly right.
Right.
All right. So number 3 for me is Kent Brockman.
Yes.
The news.
Hard-hitting news. Yep.
Hard-hitting news. I mean, there's not a thing that he says where I'm not laughing my ass off hysterically. Like whenever they have the St. Patty's Day parade we were talking about earlier, and he's like, we're on St. Patty's Day when everybody's a little bit Irish except for the gays and the Italians. Unbelievable to say on the news,
Yep. Not politically correct at all. Always thinks that he is politically correct though, and that's where like the self-deprecating part comes into it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that he hails the ants so quickly, like he jumps onto that train immediately. And fun fact, every single Monday for the past at least 8 months, I've sent Caitlin a picture of Kent Brockman on Monday morning and just said Brockman Monday. Every Monday.
Running bit in the J-Mac household. I like it.
Hasn't stopped. I have a thing that reminds me every Monday morning.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Gets your week off to a little bit of a great start. You just kind of think of some of the ridiculous things he says. He's a great character. So number 3 for me, Kent Brockman.
Really good. One thing that I like about that segment, the news segment, is it became such a staple and such a part of the legacy of the Simpsons that whenever the creators went to do Futurama, they had to do the news segment. And I like that it kind of continued into that other project.
I agree with that. I think that's some of the neat things about Futurama. If you know about the Simpsons well, you can kind of know that they weave that kind of thing into it because it's very much in the same vein.
Yeah, and it's very similar, but it's also different enough because they riff off of at least the showboating single news anchor with Kent Brockman,
Mhm.
but they in Futurama they riff off the couples news anchor. You know, that dynamic
Yeah.
between the man and the woman, or alien and woman, or whatever the hell it is. But it's it's always a fresh take. There's plenty of actual material there, so I know I've always loved it.
We may have to talk some Futurama at some point
Oh
too.
yeah, me
God,
too.
I love Futurama.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get back to
So
that.
my number 2 pick is Groundskeeper Willie.
Hell yes. I was
Yeah,
wondering if he was gonna
so,
come
yeah,
up.
Yep.
Not on mine, but he's
Yep.
very
So
close.
he's the
Very close.
groundskeeper to the school that Bart and Lisa go to. I want to say, see, that's where I kind of get lost. If it was a Treehouse of Horror episode or something where he was like one of the central, it
The
might have been
Shinning.
that, yeah, where he was a central character of it, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Funny
and you
food.
get to learn a little bit about his past and how sad it could be, but he always has a funny delivery to everything he says.
Lives in a shack behind the school,
That's right.
filled with applesauce at one point,
Only character that is more Jack than Flanders.
for sure.
Yep.
Big into grease, big grease guy.
Big grease guy.
Retirement grease is what he saves. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, he was also known as Grinskeeper Willie. Whenever he does, stand up, he was never afraid to get up on stage and make a complete fool of himself, and it typically resulted in nobody laughing and him storming off the stage pissed off, which was always great too. And then everybody laughs because he's mad, and then he thanks everybody. That's always kind of how it went with him. But yeah, that's a great pick. There's a Treehouse of Horrors episode we'll talk about where he dies in every single one of them, and it's always in a great way. We'll get there later on because I think that's a Halloween thing we talk about. But
oh yeah,
there's some great Willie stuff around the Treehouse of Horror episodes specifically, but he always comes up in a great way. Like whenever Nelson throws him the beehive, he's like, "Hey, catch the football," and it's a beehive.
Yep.
So great. Yeah, so great. I love that pick. All right, Carl.
Oh, boring Mountain Karl picked the same guy.
Oh,
yeah. I knew we were going to converge at some point. It was going to happen, but yes, I do love myself some Groundskeeper Willie. Primarily, the stuff that I love about Groundskeeper Willie is the Treehouse of Horrors episode. We've already talked about that, kind of keeping that in the back pocket for later. So I'll go ahead and do that. But yeah, there's so much Groundskeeper Willie in Treehouse of Horror that it makes you laugh every single time you see him. So.
Love that. All right, number 2 for me is Chief Wiggum.
All right.
Yeah, he was high up there for me.
No, that makes sense.
I love, like, they even have a spinoff show of his where he has a crime detective agency in Louisiana and he busts a bunch of drug dealers and Ralph is his main sidekick. It's just the whole thing ridiculous,
Why not?
Yeah, why the hell not? And he just, his ineptitude we've talked about, his management is great. We didn't even talk about Lou and
that's right, his deputies and everybody.
Yeah, Lou and what's the other guy's name? It's not Carl, it's something.
No.
But anyway, he's always, Lou, I'll bust you down to sergeant so fast. Well, Chief, I'm already a sergeant. Well, I'll bust you down again then. Just no real management. Boys. Always
that's right.
Up. Oh man, yeah. So I love Chief Wiggum. Number 2 for me there.
Yep, nice.
Good move.
My number 1.
All right, Brandon.
Number 1 character is Mo.
Hell yes. I don't.
Yeah,
at number 1 at all.
Everything
do not begrudge
that
that
you guys have covered, but also on top of that, just his commentary on everything, the bad advice he always gives, not to mention the interactions and the interactions he has with Bart when he calls in.
Oh my God! How did we not talk?
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Oh, yeah, huge ass.
Seymour butts.
Yeah, he had all kinds of them. Those were great. Yeah, no, that he can't miss. Screaming over the telephone. It's just like the bartender that just has such a short fuse. He's perfect for it. He really is.
Yeah, I think I learned prank calling from Bart and Mo. I mean, really figured it out thanks to them. So it's, again, parents, you failed. Why was I allowed to watch the show when I was younger?
we don't have time to talk about it right now. We'll get to this at some point when we're slowed, maybe later on this year. But there was so in that same vein, that's where I kind of learned prank calling too. And there used to be this plumbing company that was one number off of my best friend's like house whenever you memorize your friend's phone numbers, because that's what
happened.
Yeah. And I used to, and then I'd realize it whenever they'd answer, and I would just harass the hell out of this place all the time. Like I would just make up the most ridiculous stories about how things got shoved down my drain and like all, just because I was like, I'm already on the phone with these guys, and they just used to hate me. So anyway, we'll talk more about that and some of the things I came up with. But I learned that kind of thing from Bart Simpson. So maybe you guys' parents was on to something. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was definitely not allowed to watch this show, and that's a perfect example why. So
yeah, not harassing local plumbing establishments. Got it.
Yeah, maybe not the best move.
Okay. All right. So where are we at?
Me. Number one, my choice is Sideshow Bob.
Awesome.
I love a good villain, and the fact that Kelsey Grammer voiced anybody in The Simpsons, let alone basically evil Frasier, made me laugh my ass off. I love it. He is maniacal. He is brilliant. He has a great tragic story that has no basis in reality.
None.
And his obsession with killing Bart is eternal.
It really is.
So yeah, I mean, it's one of those characters that is so memorable to me that when I was going through this, I already knew who my number one was before we even started. So it's it may seem like an odd pick overall, but I can't get enough Sideshow Bob.
He has the tattoo across his chest that says "Die Bart Die," and this is another character that's always able to win the townspeople over somehow. He knows how to put on a show, and when they ask him about the tattoo that says "Die Bart Die," he says that it's German for "the Bart thee." Okay. They all just buy right into it. They always,
why not?
It's just you know how they are. I don't hate that at all. I love Bob. I love Frasier, and I love Kelsey Grammer. So like that helps this. I mean, the fact that Sideshow Cecil comes up, which is David Hyde Pierce, Niles from Frasier.
Right.
It's like a whole episode kind of built around a Frasier episode. It's perfectly well done.
Yeah, it's very good.
Perfect bickering brothers, and everything that Bob gets into is fantastic. I love it. I'm
good deal.
Perfectly comfortable with that.
Good. What's your pick?
My number one is C. Montgomery Burns.
I was wondering if that was going to be anybody's number one, which I totally get.
And this changes on a day-to-day basis too, for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But
he's got staying power, though. I mean,
he's got the top 5 staying power, no doubt about it. But yeah, Burns has the right amount of evil and maniacal, but also kind of a nice old man. And he has Smithers, who is his loyal assistant, who does everything for him, who's clearly into dudes.
Yep.
And, never wants to admit it, has weird naked pictures of Mr. Burns on his computer. Just overall, though, Burns is a great character. You learn a lot about Mr. Burns, and I think it's around season 7 when they go on the nature hike, and him and Homer are paired up together, and they get avalanched into the cabin, and they build the snowmans of themselves, and it just, you learn a lot about Burns there. He kind of becomes like a little bit of the everyman, but he kind of reverts back into the rich snob, and he's really shady. There's the episode where he sold the power plant to the Germans. That's a great one. All kinds of stuff like that. Mr. Burns, a great character. Number one for me today.
Yeah, his interaction with Maggie, obviously a big deal. His blocking out the sun, huge. Wow, man, I can't even start to fathom where that whole thing ends. I loved when they tried to take blood from him and they stuck the needle right through his arm. Everything about this guy is he deserves a number one spot in one of our lists. So
whenever he had all the diseases, and it was like cramming all of them through a door, so like none of them really took hold because they were all they were all just combating each other basically, and it just had this weird balance of like, okay, the fact that he has a mother that's still alive,
Mm-hmm.
He had an affair with President Taft. Like, unbelievable. Unreal. He never ceases to amaze me. Nothing surprises me with Mr. Burns. He gets into these good situations and ultimately turns out rotten as usual. A great character. Yeah.
Yep.
Found it out. That was a lot of fun, guys.
That was fun.
I'm glad we ran those down. I mean, we could talk about this stuff for hours more, but that was, I think that's in essence the great part about this show is just how versatile it is and why it appeals to different people of different walks. And I'll never get enough of this show. I'll never stop watching them just in the background because I've seen them so many times that I can just kind of listen and still kind of follow along, which I love about it. So a fantastic show. Glad we did it.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap things up for the week. We would remind everyone to follow us on social media. That's at Sensibly Loud on Instagram and Twitter, and Sensibly Loud Media on Facebook. Make sure to give us a call. We want to hear from you. Leave us a voicemail. We want to hear your opinions. We want to hear what you guys want to talk about. That number is 972-885-9361. So leave us those voicemails, and we'll see you guys next week for another episode of Sensibly Loud Radio.